Welcome to Life and Liberty Radio with David Householder. I'm Josh Jose, and together, you and I are taking another step toward freedom, both spiritual and political. So get comfortable, breathe in, and ignite your imagination. Envision a society that is spiritually deep and truly free. It's easy if you try.
The human mind abhors a vacuum. I want you to try for a moment, if you can, just to stop thinking about heaven, to put it out of your mind, to make yourself think in a way that doesn't include anything supernatural. The truth is, heaven keeps rushing back in. And you can keep these thoughts at bay for a while, but when you're stressed, when you're pressured, there is a prayer reflex for most of us. And I don't believe it's learned, because it seems to happen in virtually every culture and every language. Every language known to the human race has a word for prayer. It's right up there with words like water and mother, one of those words that every language simply has. And heaven, or the supernatural, or God, or spirit, all of those things are a normal part of being human. It's not added software. We come cable-ready, hardwired to think this way. So really, I'm going to walk you through just a little bit of vocabulary and help you understand what we're looking at here. Because I believe the reason it keeps coming back is because this simply is a reality, and this reality continues to assert itself if we don't push it away. There's four words I'd like to look at. One of them is the word for heaven. We mentioned heaven here to start with. Shamayim, in other words, the shimmering water above. The ancients looked at the sky, and it looked like the color of water, so they called it the water up there. And there's a certain shining to it, the sense of heaven, the sense of that presence of the supernatural. And the sky was used as a symbol for the supernatural, not as a location of the supernatural. Although we say, hey, up there in heaven, it's just a natural thing because it comes from that sort of word. The other word is Shekinah, or the cloud of spiritual glory, or God's presence that's around us. We sense the Spirit around us, or heaven around us, as we sense a cloud, or as we sense a sort of a mist or a fog. When we look at the word Shekinah, or the word heaven, I want to emphasize that heaven is not one of those things. It's not a place you go to just when you die, and that's somewhere else. Heaven is the reality behind everything. It's the spiritual presence holding up and directing and guiding all of reality around us. Whatever made all this seems to be involved in all this, and not in the sense that we can measure or see or hear, but in the sense that is much deeper than that. So heaven in the sense of the spiritual, which connects with Shekinah, which is sort of a way of experiencing that and becoming aware of that. The cloud of God's glory descends upon us. His presence is not so much God showing up, it's us opening our awareness to God's presence. The other one is Ruach, or breath, and we're going to get to breath in a moment. And breath is synonymous with spirit. In fact, in the Old Testament and in the New Testament, Old Testament Hebrew, New Testament Greek, there's only one word that's used for spirit and for breath. It's not a separate word. We think of inspiration, or almost breathing in something from the outside, in spirit, spiritus, the sense of breath that is there. Ruach in the Old Testament, in Hebrew, pneuma in the New Testament, from which we get pneumatic, or breath-filled tires, or pneumonia, which is a disease of the breath. And the other word is malkuth. We've had heaven, Shemayim, Shekinah, which is the cloud of God's presence, Ruach, or spirit, and Malkuth, which is God's rule, or God's kinging, or queening, or rule throughout the universe. God continues to direct what he has made. So God is not just the creator, God is also the guider, sustainer, communicator, and all of the above in the spiritual realm. The reason we say that some people say God doesn't exist is because you can't see God, you can't measure God, because if God were part of the creation, he would be, by definition, not the creator. He wouldn't be a part of what's going on. It's like going to a car and saying, I don't see the designer, I don't see the builder. Well, if the builder was in the car or part of the car, then of course the builder would not be the builder. Builder would be the buildee. So we've got Shemayim, heaven, Shekinah, the cloud of God's glory, Ruach, and Malkuth, which is kingdom or rule or reign, R-E-I-G-N, a sense of God's reach into creation, and God continues to do that. It's that point of contact between the spiritual and the physical realm. We run into that when we pray. Prayer is a kingdom Malkuth exercise. It's feeling where the spiritual and the physical connect. You are the physical, and you ground yourselves if you kneel in the ground, and so you're grounded in the physical, in the earthly, and you open yourself up to the heavenly, or what is, so to say, above, but not really locationally above. Otherwise, for Australia, it'd be a different direction than for people in the United States, because we're different sides of the world where we're kneeling. So anyways, as we look at Malkuth, it's a sense of the spiritual realm connecting with the physical realm. And all of these words are really not that important, because they're just road signs. I was out on a bike ride yesterday, and on this bike ride, I was looking for little signs, and bike paths are always poorly marked, and you often get lost. But those signs are not the trip. Neither are these words the containers of this reality. Words are very important. Words are powerful, but we don't want to confuse the words with the reality, the spiritual reality behind it, because the words are actually a physical reality, something we speak, and also something that we can see if we write it down. So any more than those signs are the reality of the bike trip, these words are just road signs. They're just road signs that point us towards the spiritual, which is by definition impossible to define. So let's return, if we could, to the sense of spirit and breathing. As we look at breathing, I want you to, just for a second, if you could, just to hold your breath. And if you were to hold your breath, you would get a very big urge to breathe in at some point. And that's the way it is with the spiritual. We can push it out of our lives and act as if the spiritual dimension is not there, and be all agnostic or even atheist or even anti-theist. But that's sort of like holding your breath. It's a lot of work, because our natural inclination, our natural sense, because we're not just physical beings, the truest part of you is spiritual, and you know that, and I know that. There's a deep part of us that isn't physical, that is connected somehow to the physical in ourselves. We don't know how that works, but there's a spiritual part of us that is deeply connected to the spiritual nature of the Creator, and we can push that away, and it will continue to rush back in, just like your breath does when you've been holding your breath for a long time.
So put some sunshine and water on these fresh ideas and keep taking that next step toward freedom. Join us every weekday for the latest life and liberty ideas. The views expressed on this program are purely those of the presenter, and not necessarily those of the advertisers or organizations or persons with which the presenter has a relationship. Please click on the Amazon banner at the top of the Life and Liberty page, and consider doing all your online shopping through this portal. See you tomorrow.